talking about innovation and entrepreneurialism in Uganda's apparel industry. So these images behind me are what many people consider the bad Africa, filled with war, poverty, famine, and peril. It's fabled the dark continent. These images rely heavily on colonial, racist, and orientalist stereotypes that shape global processes such as military intervention and development. What people consider the good Africa are safaris and Egypt's pyramids, but rarely do we have images that reflect the daily individual lives of the inhabitants of Africa and the diversity of the individual nations that shape this continent. So, in the grand scheme of things, the images that we consume of Africa either depicted as hell or Eden. And we rarely look closely at the complexities and the immense zones of possibilities in between these two very extreme perspectives. So my goal in my research is to dismantle the negative perceptions of Africa through analyzing the innovation, entrepreneurship that colors this dark continent. I will do so by looking at female entrepreneurship in Uganda. And so I know many of you think this is very, very ambitious. We've had these perceptions of Africa for a very long time. But I'm uniquely positioned to conduct this research due to my affiliation with the UT's very own Feminist Geography Collective under Dr. Caroline Faria. So because of my relationship with Dr. Faria, I have archival data, interviews, and transnational partnerships with Ugandan scholars and institutions. So I am researching this, the economic globalization of Africa using an everyday item, your donated clothes. So just a general kind of view. How many of you have ever donated clothes to charities like Goodwill? Wow. I did not expect that. So, well, while we often think of this as an act of charity, and then we don't really think much about it at all. Where do these clothes go? How do they shape the economy? We can follow these clothes to learn more about globalization and the ways in which it shapes the lives of people in distant places, and how those people in turn shape the trade. So let's start talking about used clothing. The secondhand clothing industry is dynamic and highly profitable, with a global wholesale value of $3.7 billion. 85% of the clothes that you all donate are immediately sold and shipped overseas. So, and many of which end up in Africa. And so that is where I'm basing all of my research. Okay, so 81% of all clothing purchased in Uganda are used clothing. In Uganda is the second leading nation in Africa for clothing imports. So there's a very good chance that your donated t-shirt is headed there to one of its many vibrant market city centers. And so while this is a very popular industry, it should be noted that it is also highly debated. Part of my research is the archival analysis of media coverage of the trade in the past 20 years. There are many people in Uganda who feel as though there should be a complete ban of secondhand clothing because this influx of cheap clothes is seen to be damaging local textile industries. So when researchers often research Africa in general, they typically look over the African population's active participation in the globalization and their participation in their market in general. So one of my goals is to not be like one of those researchers. I want to look at and understand the traders and the way that they maneuver through their systems, and the way that they innovate this trade, and the way that they work through this new system of global economy that is being placed upon them due to their newly liberalized borders. So this is Doreen. She's one of our partners in Uganda. She just graduated from college, and I have her up here because her story completely undermines the idea of what people think of when they think of Africa in this industry. So Doreen, she manipulates this trade by finding the perfect city centers to make the most amount of money. And then she goes and she makes her own clothing from this used clothing. So while many people think that it's harming the textile industry, we have people like Doreen who are making livings off of it. So, in the spring, I'll be presenting at the American Association of Geographers in New Orleans. So that's goal one of my research, is to educate and research more about Africa and its overall.
Yeah, that's 6 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.